Hello everyone, this is Dmitry from Galileosky. In this video I'm going to tell you about the process of upgrading the bootloader for the Galileosky 7X tracking devices. Many users are facing the problem with the lack of memory when using multiply easy logic algorithms. That's why several new firmware was developed that works on the bootloader version 2. The new version of the bootloader significantly expands the memory capacity for algorithms and allows to add new functions implemented in the firmware of the device itself. However, the process of updating the bootloader version isn't so simple. The user has to perform several manipulations. The bootloader update process is given in the configurator software in description of the latest firmware. However, I will additionally explain this process in this video tutorial for clarity. So, let's start with the requirements. The updated bootloader is supported by all Galileosky 7X tracking devices. The battery of the device must be charged to at least 3.4 volts. Also, an external power supply of at least 8 volts must be connected to the device. It always makes sense to have the latest version of the configurator software to update the firmware of tracking device. I will leave the download link in the description to this video. So, the tracking device is connected, the battery is charged, we can start. Run the configurator. On the device tab, check the external power supply voltage and battery voltage. Everything is alright. To upgrade the bootloader version, you need a special transition firmware version 33. The first thing to do is to update the device to this firmware. On the device tab, in the bottom right corner, click Upgrade Firmware and in the list that appears, select Firmware 33. Press the OK button. If you are doing the procedure remotely, just send the command upgrade 33 and wait for the device to download and install the firmware. So, the firmware 33 is installed. We see it at the same place on the device tab in the identification data field. Go to the commands tab and send the command upgrade BL. In response, the tracking device sends the 4-digit code. Repeat the command upgrade BL space and the code that was sent by the tracking device. Send a command. The tracking device simply restarts. The process of updating the bootloader version is complete. We can safely install the firmware higher than version 33. The process is similar when the bootloader is updated remotely. You send the command upgrade_bl, get the code, resend the command with the received code. But in response, the tracking device sent nothing. You see the message no response. Usually, you see this message when the command doesn't reach the tracking device because of the low level of the GSM signal or doesn't get the response from the device. But in this case, this message will also come if the update process is going according to plan, which can be a bit confusing. If you are connected remotely via the configurator software and the signal level is good, of course you will see that the device is disconnected and reconnected. But what if you are sending command via SMS? In this case, you can try to send the command with the previously received code again after some time. If the tracking device has already received this command before and restarted, you will get the message that command is unrecognized in response. In other words, the command to update the bootloader has already been processed and the device isn't waiting for the command with the parameter as the code. The update procedure is complete and you can safely update the device to the desired firmware. So, we have updated the bootloader of the tracking device. Go to the device tab again and click the update firmware button. Select for example firmware 37 and press OK. Wait until the firmware update process is finished. As you can see, the tracking device has booted normally and the firmware version now is 37. The update process was successful. What to do if you accidentally started the upgrade process to firmware 37 without an intermediate update of the bootloader on firmware 33? Usually, in this case, nothing terrible happens. The tracking device cannot boot to firmware 37 and automatically rolls back to the previously installed firmware. Nevertheless, in extremely rare cases, it happens that the tracking device doesn't have time to reset the command to upgrade the firmware and tries to load the firmware 37 repeatedly. In this case, the command upgrade stop will help you. Just send the upgrade stop command any way you like. This will stop the firmware upgrade process and you will be able to perform the procedure correctly. Pay attention to the syntax of the command. The parameter stop must be written in lowercase letters. Another situation is possible. If the firmware upgrade fails, the tracking device tries to start the installed firmware repeatedly, restarts and tries to boot again, and so on. In this case, the tracking device isn't available either online or with a local connection, and the LED on the body of the device is light blue. In this case, do not panic either. The tracking device will try to load the firmware 33 times. After that, it will automatically roll back to the previous working firmware. This usually takes about 30 minutes. After the device returns to the previous firmware, you can run the firmware update procedure again. In exceptional cases, tracking device has to be forced into bootloader mode. To do this, you need to connect a voltage of 7 volts to the inputs in 0, in 1, in 2 and in 3, and then supply power to the device. In this case, the tracking device will automatically switch to the bootloader mode, and you can update its firmware via the configurator. You can find a detailed description of this method of terminal recovery in our knowledge base. I will also leave a link to this article in the description below the video. So, we have figured out how to update the Galileosky 7X tracking devices bootloader to version 2, found out why it is necessary, and considered various options for the user in case of abnormal situation. That's all for now. There was Dmitry from Galileosky. Goodbye everyone.